happens, as it were, by accident with me. We had a rather boring church magazine, and I was about 15 at the time in the sort of youth club, and I decided to jazz it up a bit and turn it into a sort of junior version of a Daily Express with some quite wacky headlines and things, and didn't go down too well with some members of the congregation. But it did reach the attention of an ITV program called The Sunday Break. And this was a youth club of the air. And so they invited me on to talk about my church magazine. And I stayed for quite a while, actually, until I got a bit too old. I sort of outgrew it when I was about 17, the program. And I thought my career was over then in television.
Yeah. No,
But it revived.
I detect a Yorkshire accent there as well. West
That's
Yorkshire,
right.
perhaps?
Leeds.
And that's where you served most of your apprenticeship in regional newspapers, isn't it? Harrogate
Yeah,
and
that's
so on.
right. Harrogate and on the Yorkshire Post then in Leeds. And eventually I moved up to Newcastle, where I joined the BBC as a news writer. In those days, they weren't sort of all-purpose radio journalists as we have today. You know, you either wrote the news bulletin or you read it, and if you read it, you're usually an actor. So gradually, I sort of worked my way onto this side of the microphone.
And then on to Points West in Bristol.
Yes, and I went full-time. I took a big gamble because it was to be a full-time freelance, whereas before I'd been on the BBC staff, you know, with a pension and things like that. But the job in Bristol was a freelance job, and I was just about to get married, so I debated it with my wife-to-be, and we decided to take the gamble. And it all turned out very well, because while I was working in Bristol, I went into our studio one day, and there were lots of strange faces, and they were busy auditioning for a new program, a new current affairs program for children. So I said, "Oh, can I have a go?" And they said, "Well, we've had, this has been arranged for a long time, and we've got quite a lot of well-known people auditioning. If there's any space at the end of the videotape, we'll give you a ring." So I went back to our newsroom and thought no more about it, and they did give me a ring. They had 10 minutes left on the end of the videotape, which in those days was very expensive videotape. They said, "Well, okay, we've got 10 minutes left, so you can come down and do an audition." But I got the job. And so that started me off in children's programs, presenting Search. And then a year after that came Newsround. And the agenda was the same on day one as it is now. It was to inform the younger audience about what's happening in the world in a way that they will understand, using images that they'll understand and words that they'll understand. And I knew within about a week that it had really worked, because a friend of mine said, "Oh, I was in the garden the other day and my little boy came running out to tell me all about this treasure galleon that had been found." And I said, "Oh, what do you hear about that?" And he said, "It's been on the news." And so my friend said, "Well, no, it can't have been on the news yet. It's not 6 o'clock." He said, "No, it's been on my news." So already the children were developing that proprietary attitude to it, which is a great thing. And you're on a winner then.
And then, of course, came Multicoloured Swap Shop, which was as groundbreaking in many ways as its ITV rival Tiswas.
Yeah, I mean, Tiswas started off, as you well know, in the Midlands and was a regional programme for a little while. But I always felt it was more for students and young adults and adults with childish minds, Tiswas. Whereas Swap Shop was more for children. And there were very different sorts of programs. I mean, we didn't put children into cages and throw custard at them and things like that. We treated them a bit more sensibly. It was a great fun Swap Shop because, I was brought in as a bit of grit, really, because it was the first time, certainly on the BBC, that there had been a 3-hour programme for children without any kind of script. We just it wasn't made up as we went along, because we knew exactly what was going to happen next, but there was no rehearsal and no script. I think that the bosses were a little bit concerned that it might all be a bit too candy flossy, just pop groups and interviews and stars and things like that and competitions. So they wanted a bit of grit, which is why I was there originally. And I think, continue to provide bits of grit. And we did have interviews with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, things like that, live on the show. But I also managed to let my hair down a bit. I announced that I was going to leave Newsround on Saturday Superstore. Philip Schofield and Sarah Green were doing it in those days, and I was the guest on the show and the press conference thing they had on the programme. And I sort of dropped a little bombshell. They didn't know I was going to tell the audience that I was going to be leaving Newsround, and it made the newspapers. And almost immediately, BBC Pebble Mill phoned me up and said, "How about joining Countryfile?" And I must admit, I had been a little bit worried about whether an adult audience would accept me, because I have been for 20 years a children's television person. But as I say, there were an awful lot of adults watching children's television, and I was never that stupid on children's television. People always took me quite seriously. So it was actually quite effortless to move into adult television.
Thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please click on the like button, ring that notification bell to be informed of any future videos, and above all, make sure you subscribe. Thank you.